This video is about one of the most important questions. What leads to a happy life?
Realistically, money.
Being wealthy is definitely a big aspect of it.
Save a lot of money.
Earning money.
It's very important to be rich. It's easy for people to say they don't care about having money and that money can't buy happiness, but that's really not true.
Because I would rather cry on a yacht than in a Subaru.
Clearly, having a successful career and financial wealth are important to people. Is there a number in mind?
You say it's true, but what really sucks is that, ironically, it's this mindset, and that'll be their own downfall if they do get there. That's what really sucks. It's really unlucky. Is that it is that very mindset that makes it so if these guys make it to that point, it will fuck them over entirely, because it's not what they will think it is, and then they've been going for only that, and it'll soon fuck them over.
Mind?
Sorry, that's how that works. I'm sorry to tell you.
Yeah. In a survey from 2018 of around 100,000 college freshmen, about 55% said they wanted to be successful in their career, and 83% reported that they wanted to become rich. But do these accomplishments really increase happiness? Well, that's what I want to find out in this video. But how do you study what makes people happy? Well, you can ask them. What's going to make you happy? But people aren't really good at judging what will make them happy. Winning the lottery seems like it should make you happy. But numerous studies on lottery winners find that after the initial surge of happiness wears off, many are no happier than the rest of us. Some are in fact more miserable than they were beforehand.
Because you don't see as many people as you used to see. Obviously, you become slightly isolated, I think, in some ways.
Yeah, I agree.
Another problem is that people's memories aren't reliable.
We only detect, encode, and store in our brains bits and pieces of the entire experience in front of us. It's called reconstructed memories. It happens to us in all the aspects of our life all the time.
Most studies on happiness find older people and ask them to recall what made them happy. But as we've just seen, memory is unreliable. So a better way to conduct the study would be to follow people throughout their entire lives, capturing the choices they make and how those affect their happiness. That is really hard to do. But there is one study like this that's been running since 1938. Now, 85 years is a long time to run a study, so it has been passed down from one generation of researchers to the next. It's currently run by its fourth director, Robert Waldinger. What is the claim to fame, then, of the study?
You know, the claim to fame is that it is, as far as we know, the longest study of human development that's ever been done, the longest study of any depth. These are studies that take deep dives into people's lives and their mental and physical health.
The study actually began as two separate studies by two groups of Harvard researchers that didn't know about each other. The first group followed 268 young men from Harvard to find out how they would develop into early adulthood.
So, of course, if you want to study normal young adult development, you study all white guys from Harvard, right? You know, it's one of those limitations.
The second group studied 456 boys from middle school onwards from Boston's poorest and most disadvantaged families.
So there were these two studies, both meant to be studies of what goes right in development and how we predict who does well as they grow up.
Eventually, the two studies merged into one, the Harvard Study of Adult Development. At the start of the study, the participants were interviewed and received extensive physical examinations. And as they grew, they entered all walks of life. Some of them became bricklayers and doctors and factory workers and lawyers, and one even became president of the United States. Every 2 years, researchers asked them questions about their lives, like, if you could stop working without loss of income, would you? What would you do instead? How often do you feel isolated from others? True or false, life has more pain than pleasure. And other questions about their marriage, career, friendships, and their physical and mental health. While the study started with just 724 participants, over time their spouses and children were also included in the study. So how many people are we talking about in total who have been part of the study?
Between 2,500 and 3,000 people altogether in the study.
And as technology improved, so did the methods of data collection.
We now draw blood for DNA. DNA wasn't even imagined in 1938. We measure messenger RNA, DNA methylation. We bring people into our laboratory, we deliberately stress them out and then see how quickly they recover from stress, looking at heart rate variability, for example, looking at cortisol deposited in hair, because that seems to be a long-term measure of circulating cortisol. But all of these new methods are in the service of studying the same big phenomena of human well-being.
So what do 85 years of research across entire human lives teach us about a healthy and happy life?
Two huge takeaways, really. One is no surprise. It's that if you take care of your physical health, it has huge benefits for not just for your longevity, but for how long you stay healthy. Eating well, getting regular exercise, not abusing alcohol or drugs, not smoking, getting preventive health care. Exercise is hugely important.
A Taiwanese study looked at the medical data of 416,000 healthy people between 1996 and 2008. 8 years later, they followed up with each person to look at the link between exercise and mortality. They found that people who exercised just 15 minutes a day had a 14% reduced risk of dying and a 3-year longer life expectancy. Every additional 15 minutes of exercise decreased the risk of dying by an extra 4%. A large meta-analysis from 2008 confirms that people who are physically active have a reduced risk of dying during the time frames investigated in each study. Exercise also protects our cognitive health. A meta-analysis from 2014 found that participants with higher levels of physical activity had a 35% reduced risk of cognitive decline and a 14% reduced risk of dementia.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the big surprising finding is relationships, not just keeping us happier, but keeping us healthier and helping us live longer.
It's not just the Harvard study. There's now a whole list of studies that show the importance of relationships to human happiness and health. They teach us 3 main lessons. The first is that relationships are great for our health. In 2010, researchers looked
this shit on delay, man.
Yeah, I got you, bro.
across 148 studies with a total of more than 300,000 participants. They found that on average, people with stronger social connections had a 50% increased likelihood of survival for any given year. Being married, in particular, has a large impact on how long people live.
There's one study, I think it's pretty well respected, that suggests that marriage...
So because you have bad ones, that it matters like that. You're missing the point though. Is that healthy ones are good. Doesn't mean that it counteracts the fact that the bad ones are really bad, right? So I think what that means, right?
Right.
You get it though?
Married men live 12 years longer on average than unmarried men, and married women live 7 years longer on average than unmarried women. Marriage is always a better deal for men on all parameters than it is for women. And it's not because you have a marriage license, right? It's because people living together in an intimate partnership tend to keep each other healthier. You have somebody who's kind of watching, looking out for you. It's a very real, concrete effect.
If feeling well connected to others makes us happier, healthier, and extends our lives, then what happens if we feel disconnected?
There's a researcher, Julianne Holt-Lundstad, out of the University of Utah, who did a meta-analysis of a whole slew of studies of the physical effects of loneliness. And her calculation was that being lonely is as dangerous to your health as smoking half a pack of cigarettes a day, or as dangerous as being obese.
I knew that.
Feeling disconnected from others also makes you more prone to disease. A large meta-analysis from 2016 found that poor social relationships were associated with a 29% increase in risk of heart disease and a 32% increase in risk of stroke.
So these have real sort of quantifiable consequences when we look at studies of thousands of people.
One caveat is that most studies...
Basically, is that as we became social beings, right? From way back when, way back when, right? if you were outcast from your group, right, it meant that you had increased chances of dying. You would die, right? Because if you were way back in the days, super far back, right? If you had a group of people and you were hunter-gatherers together, right? You'd hunt and gather as a squad, but if you're exiled, you just die, right? So throughout evolution, there's this thing with loneliness. It was important for if you feel rejected, that you have this almost like this physical pain. And it was important to feel lonely so you don't get exiled and die on your own. That was the whole point of it, right? That makes sense?
On the health effects of loneliness, focus on people aged 50 and older.
Brother, I quit smoking cigarettes for no reason, man.
And loneliness is on the rise.
The U.S. Surgeon General today declared a new public health epidemic in America: loneliness.
We're now finding that 1 in 2 adults report measurable levels of loneliness, and it turns out that young people are most affected. And here's why this is so concerning. It's because we've realized that loneliness is more than just a bad feeling. It has real consequences for our mental and physical health.
The UK has appointed a minister of loneliness. Many countries are concerned about this breakdown in social connection.
A question about loneliness, like what does that look like? Because obviously everyone experiences some periods of loneliness. So, you know, when does it become sort of really detrimental, and how do we define that?
Well, loneliness is different from being alone, right? So you can be alone and quite content, and many people are. In fact, the ability to be content when you're alone is quite a skill, and it's a wonderful ability. Loneliness is that subjective experience of being less connected to people than you want to be. And that's why, you know, you can be lonely in a crowd. We're all on a spectrum between extrovert.
Not only can you be lonely in a crowd, you're more likely to be lonely in a crowd, I think, if you don't have that connection. Because you feel like you should have that connection right there, and you should be like the others, and you're not. You feel like you're an outcast.
Introversion, you know, wanting lots of people in our lives, and introversion. Actually needing a lot of solitude and not wanting a lot of people. A lot of people are stressful for introverts. And what we know is that neither one is healthier, right? The introverts are perfectly healthy. They just may need 1 or 2 really solid relationships and don't want a lot more people. Nothing wrong with that at all. Whereas extroverts may want lots of people in their lives.
So the second lesson is that it's not how many people you know or see, or even whether you're married or not, because a bad marriage can be worse for your health than getting divorced. Instead, it's about the quality of your close relationships that matters.
When we'd followed all the original people out to their 80s, we said, okay, what data actually are the best predictors at age 50 of who's going to be happy and healthy at age 80, as opposed to sick or dead? And we thought we were going to be looking at blood pressure and cholesterol level at age 50 as the strongest predictors. It was their relationships. It was particularly their satisfaction with their marital relationships that was the strongest predictor.
And relationships don't just keep us happier and physically healthier, they also protect our brains. People who are in secure relationships in their 80s, where they feel that they can rely on the other person, find that their memories stay sharper for longer. And people who feel lonely, well, their memories fade quicker. A study of retired US adults found that the rate of cognitive decline was 20% higher over 10 years for those who felt lonely. A meta-analysis from 2018 further confirms the detrimental effects of loneliness, finding that it also increased the risk of dementia. But there's still a big open question. What is it about the relationships that makes them particularly healthful or helpful?
The best hypothesis, for which there's some pretty decent research now, is that relationships are emotion regulators. They're stress regulators. So stressful things happen every day to many of us, right? So then what happens? Well, the body goes into fight or flight mode. Blood pressure goes up, respirations become more rapid, circulating stress hormone levels rise. But then the body is meant to go back to equilibrium after that normal fight or flight response.
They're faster with somebody you like.
A challenge. If I can come home and there's somebody here to talk to, I can literally feel my body calm down. What we're pretty sure happens is that people who are isolated that they're more likely to stay in a kind of chronic fight or flight mode. And that what that means is that they have higher levels of circulating cortisol, higher levels of chronic inflammation, and that those things gradually wear away body systems. So that's how, for example, chronic stress can predict coronary artery disease, but also arthritis, and also type 2 diabetes, because of this common mechanism that breaks down multiple body systems.
The key to preventing this breakdown is simple. Just spend a little more time with the people you care about. Unfortunately, we seem to be doing the exact opposite. Before going into why we're doing the exact opposite, this part of the video was sponsored by BetterHelp. There are many things that can negatively impact our happiness. It could be stress or fear or a clinical mental health issue like depression or anxiety. But regardless of which one it is, therapy can help you by giving you the tools to approach your life in a very different way. And that's where BetterHelp comes in. They connect you with an experienced, licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. I know that finding a good society. There is an alarming trend in our society.
Social engagement with friends decreased from 60 minutes a day in 2003 to just 20 minutes a day in 2020.
The technology has fundamentally changed how we interact with one another and how we communicate with one another, and unfortunately has often replaced what used to be rich in-person connections with online connections, which often are of lower quality.
Now, you may say you're an introvert and you don't need to spend much time with people to feel good. And while it's true that introverts and extroverts need different amounts of social stimulation, both need human connection. In 2015, Holt Lundstad and her colleagues looked at the data of 70 independent studies with more than 3 million total participants.
That's a good sample
Similar
size.
to other studies, they found that the subjective feeling of loneliness increased the risk of premature death by 26%. But they also looked at the objective measure of social isolation, how much time you're actually spending with other people. And they found that social isolation increased the risk of premature death by 29%. And unfortunately, introverts are more at risk of being socially isolated.
Bro, listen, I'm just gonna say, chat, guys, trying to label things all the time doesn't help anybody, okay? Like, I feel like people putting labels that are forcibly all the time doesn't help you. Like, oh yeah, I'm an introvert. That's why I don't talk to people. I don't like it. I don't do it. And it's easy to back yourself into the corner and become like a victim of yourself. You are making yourself a victim. You're making your own problem, right? I always told myself I'm not extrovert or introvert. In certain groups, I do really good. In certain groups, I don't do good. I'm nothing. I don't really have a label there, right? And I don't want to put myself in a box and say, oh yeah, today was so hard. I didn't do anything because I'm introvert. And tonight I feel I'm introvert. I'm not gonna talk to anybody. It's just weird. Like, just go with the flow. We don't have to have these labels all the time. I think it's stupid to have to do that.
Just like many young people today, many participants from the Harvard study also believed that money and achievement were what they should go after to have a good life. But what this study and plenty of others show is that the people who were the happiest were those that leaned into their relationships with their partner, friends, family, and community. And when they were in their 80s, the researchers asked them, what are you most proud of, and what is your biggest regret?
Many people said that they were proudest of something to do with their relationships. So it could be, I was a good boss, I was a good parent, I was a good friend, I was a good mentor. Nobody said, I made a fortune, right? Nobody even said, I won the Nobel Prize, which a few people did. It wasn't about those badges of achievement, right, that we think of as, oh, that's what we got to get to feel like we've had a meaningful life. Everybody looking back mentioned their relationships. The biggest regret was, particularly among the men, because this was the World War II generation, they said, I wish I hadn't spent so much time at work. I wish I had spent more time with the people I care about.
Aware.
So what about our original question? Do achievements and money really make us happy? Well, according to the Harvard study, badges of achievement do not necessarily make us happier, but doing meaningful work can. And what about money? Does that make us happier? Well, there's a famous study from 2010 by Daniel Kahneman and Angus Deaton that found that above an income of around $75,000 a year, there is no improvement whatever in the measures of emotional well-being. But 11 years later, Matthew
I thought it was
Killingsworth
100K.
studied data on 33,000 employed US adults, and he found that higher incomes corresponded to higher levels of well-being. So he wrote, there was no evidence for an experienced well-being plateau above $75,000 a year, contrary to some influential past research. In 2022, Kahneman and Killingsworth set out to resolve the conflict with Barbara Mellers as a mediator. When they analyzed Killingsworth's data, they discovered an interesting pattern. Depending on how happy people were relative to others, earning more resulted in different increases in happiness. For each income level, they divided people into groups based on their happiness, low, medium, high, and so on. They found that below a threshold of roughly $100,000 a year, a higher income was associated with more happiness for all groups. But if you go above that threshold, then for the unhappiest group, a further increase is not associated with more happiness. However, for all the happier groups, higher incomes do seem to lead to more happiness. And the real twist is that those who were the happiest to start with stand to gain the most with increasing income.
Oh shit, that makes sense actually.
Relationships, meaningful work, and money all play a role in our happiness. So why can it—
Wait a minute. Wait. That proves what I said initially when the video started. That the people in this bracket who only seek this it won't do shit when they get there, and the people who are happy regardless do get there. Wait, that literally said what I said at the beginning.
Relationships, meaningful work, and money all play a role in our happiness. So why can it be so hard to realize just how important relationships are?
You know, if you think about it, relationships have been there since before we have memory, right? So they're like the air we breathe. We take them for granted. So you don't think about that as something you cultivate in order to make yourself happy. We don't think about that at all. And yet when we study it scientifically, we find that that turns out to be an enormous predictor of happiness as well as physical health.
What's going to make you happy?
Being wealthy is definitely a big aspect of it, but that loving family is kind of like the foundation of it, you know what I mean?
Realistically, money, but like building deep connections with people are what's going to make me happy.
That's awesome. Having like good relationships with other people.
You raise a family.
Have a family and provide.
Friends and family. Seeing my family happy, that's all I really care about.
Giving back to the community where you came from, the world.
What's up?
They got it all figured out. Because most of the chat would be like, it's the money, but it really comes down to like the family and people you have around you, I think.
Yes, well, what you would use the money for? I feel like a lot of times, like, you can kind of get there without it. In some of these
Strong
ways,
family
but
base just to come home to every night.
Yeah, I want to get married, have a ton of kids. I want to.
How many is a ton?
Probably like 5 or 6.
That's
as many as I can afford.
In fact, when I interviewed people, I was pleasantly surprised to see how many identified the importance of relationships. So if you could give people advice on what to start doing today to start being happier, what suggestions would you make?
To think about it as analogous with physical fitness. If you go work out today, you don't come home and say, I'm done, I don't ever have to do that again, right? It's like a practice, right? That the people who were best at relationships were the people who made it a practice.
Yeah, what did their plan?
Day after day, week after week, to stay connected to the people they cared about. You know, to talk on the phone, to go for walks, to have coffee, to do whatever, to play basketball. The people who took those actions again and again regularly were the people who stayed very connected and stayed happy that way. So what we propose is that this is a practice we can cultivate, and that there are tiny actions that people can take. We have many stories of people who thought that they were no good at relationships, that they were never going to have happy lives, and then it changed. And many times it changed when they didn't expect it. So, like, we have a story about one man who really didn't have a good marriage and was kind of distant from his kids, didn't have any friends. And then when he retired, he joined a gym and he found this group of friends that became, for the first time, a kind of tribe for him. And that's just one example of how
Yeah, you go to the gym, you find people friends, and you make a company with them, and now you have fucking money, relationships, and physical well-being all at the same time in the one go.
Our lives take these twists and turns that we usually can't predict, that we don't
That's
expect,
Max right there.
and
That's
many of
Max.
those turns are in positive directions. The message that the science tells us is don't give up on this aspect of your life, because many things can change at any age.
Never back down, never what? Never give up. Never give up. You can do it. You can give up. I mean, don't give up.
On a happy note, link of your pizza journey, link.